The winds have been dropped down to where the sustained winds are 50 miles an hour right now. It's over central North Carolina. Ian is what's left of Ian, and it's hard to even find a center in the satellite presentation of the system because it's wrapped in a lot of drier air, a lot of cooler air into it, and all those things are not indicative of what a hurricane or a tropical storm are. So right now they're calling this a post-tropical system because of all the cool air that's come into it, but it's still producing winds 50 miles an hour. The main thing right now is, since it's moved inland, storm surge has come down below warning levels. So those are good. So all the storm surge watches and warnings along the coast have been dropped. And the big impact, the big concern is the rainfall rates right now. So we're still looking at 3 to 6 inches of rain. There could be spots of 8 inches once it gets up into Virginia and the wind pushes up the mountains, and then they'll have some higher rates right in along the mountain ranges there. It became a hurricane again and then moved ashore. There was about 6-7 feet of storm surge in those areas right along Georgetown, which is just across the bay from Charleston, about 50 miles across from Charleston north of it. And about 2:15 this afternoon came ashore, 85-mile-an-hour winds sustained. And so still did a lot of damage to the coastal region down there with a lot of flooding. I've seen a lot of photographs of the damage in that area, and the flooding was absolutely tremendous from the storm surge. We're going to continue floods for several days because of all this rain that's going to come down. The rivers will swell. They'll become minor and moderate floods, but no, I don't anticipate any record setters for this, but that'll take days for that water to make it out back down to the ocean and for things to subside, all the roads to clear. They're still having flooding in Florida. They've got major interstates in Florida that are closed because of river flooding from the rainfall as the rain fell and then went into the rivers there. You can do the best to do some prevention. I mean, clearly, Florida learned a lot back in 1992. It was hit by Hurricane Andrew. I was in the middle of that one, and so we learned a lot about building codes from that. One of the things that was mentioned in doing the damage assessment today down in Florida of some of the hardest hit areas on the southwest coast of Florida there was that the buildings were standing, you know, that they had withstood this. Now, there was a lot of things that weren't, you know, it tore up roads, it tore up harbors and boats, and a lot of damage was done to bridges and et cetera. But some of the buildings were still standing. Now, some of those along the coast had severe water damage, so there's not much you can do about that. But one of the things that we've learned is how to build things better, is my point, and to be a bit resilient. And then we keep talking about the impacts on our end and the Weather Service and as our forecasters to people to try and get them to understand what this means to them and their risk. And then finally, I want to point out, as far as meteorology is concerned, you know, a week and a half ago or more, this system was just a bunch of clouds before it headed into Trinidad and Tobago, which is extremely far south for a system to form up next to South America. I mean, that's hardly ever heard of. And yet we forecast that to go into the Caribbean and become a major hurricane and head toward the area between the Yucatan and Cuba at that time. So 30 years ago, 20 years ago, we would have never been able to make that forecast. So a lot of research, a lot of understanding of the physics of the atmosphere, and then applying that research that we've learned about hurricanes to models to make them better at forecasting hurricanes has really helped out a lot. But that being said, how can you really prepare for something that you've never felt in your life? 155-mile-an-hour sustained winds, and just the sheer devastation, and it'll be lasting with power out for several weeks, the flooded areas for several days, if not longer down there. So there is only so much you can do. The mind can only comprehend so much.